Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Butterfly Effect podcast. And today's video has been requested by our patrons, so thank you very much to them and enjoy.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Butterfly Effect Butterfly Effect video? That's not who we are. We're the Butterfly Effect podcast. In today's video we will be talking about Life is Strange 1. And as you can tell by the title, we have a bit of a controversial one today. Jack has a bit of an opinion, and I'm just going to give you the mic, mate. Tell us what you think.
My opinion is that Max Caulfield is overrated. And I'm going to say that she's overrated in two ways. One, as just a character, because for me personally, I know this is going to peeve some people off, but hey, it's my opinion, it's subjective. I don't get that excited when playing as Max. And considering that you could play as her in 3 games, Life is Strange 1, technically Before the Storm because you've got the DLC, and Double Exposure, I feel like she should be more iconic in my eyes than what she actually is. So I think she's overrated in that sense as a character. Also overrated as a person, because I do think there's a lot of things that people overlook in terms of just her personality and some of the things that she's done previously. So listen, I'm probably in the minority here. I've probably just got rid of a couple of subscribers. Hopefully not. But yeah, that's my opinion. I think that she's overrated, and that's what we're going to explore in this video.
Don't worry, mate, I'll bring him back in. I love Max. I'll be defending my client. Just hit resubscribe, please. Nah, but like on one hand, mate, like a lot of the points you make, like, because I do really like Max as a character, but I do somewhat agree with you in the sense, if we look at these choice-based games that we play, I definitely think she's not, like, you know, the gleaming, my favourite main character, you know. I wouldn't say she's in the same bracket as a Clementine from, you know, Telltale's The Walking Dead, or maybe like a Sam from Until Dawn, perhaps. And I think, maybe to back your point up a little bit, I think one of the big arguments anti-Max, right, is that she has this counterpart, a side character, who ends up becoming the main character in the next game, Before the Storm, right? And I think we've expressed it on the channel. We're probably just more of a fan of the Chloe Price character than the Max Caulfield character. I would probably argue it's better written. There's more darkness there. There's more tragedy, which is interesting considering she doesn't have a power, which is a big part of the Life is Strange games, right?
Exactly, and it takes me into, I mean, this is absolute mess, this brainstorm that I've just got written out in front of me. It does take me to a point that I'd like to start with, which one of the reasons why I think I just don't connect with Max is the lack of a backstory, in a way. So looking at her character, she lived in Arcadia Bay, she moved and she's come back to Blackwell. She likes photography. That's pretty much it. And I'd actually say, you know, you bringing up Chloe there, is that Max's story is so entwined with Chloe's, and because I find Chloe a far more compelling character, that Max just falls away by the wayside a little bit. I look at Chloe and she's got so much going on. You see like a definite arc that goes with her. So like we see her in the Farewell DLC where she's really academically tuned in. She loves her science. You know, she's making moves in the world. Like, it looks like she's going to have a prosperous future, right? Her dad's alive. Everything's looking well. Then, obviously, Max goes. You see this shift. She starts to dye her hair. She starts to become a little bit more, what's the word? Just sort of reckless and like, not a fantastic person to potentially be around in terms of like people at Blackwell, a little bit more rebellious, you could say. And you can see a definite change here. Whereas when I look at Max, I see someone who starts off quite quirky, a bit awkward, a bit introverted, which again I'd say are sort of very surface level traits. Even going into Double Exposure, I don't see a massive change in her character. Maybe she's a little bit more flirtatious, but it's almost like there's been no character growth, you know, because in the first game, she gets this power, and she goes to save a friend, and let's face it, it was a massive hassle to get to that point where she could potentially save Chloe or not. You go into double exposure and it's the exact same thing again. So there's no real personal growth in Max's character, that it feels like just a rehash of the first game, but not as good. So straight away I can say that Chloe has gone on some sort of arc where Max hasn't gone on that much of an arc in herself, and that's why I do feel like she's a little bit on the overrated side.
No, that's fair. Like, you know, I take a lot of your points on board. One thing I will sort of counter it with, I guess, which is like a pro Max point here, is that, like, I think when we get like a main character, often we'll see from a lot of these games, you'll get like a very sort of capable person, maybe someone who's quite action oriented, maybe someone who's quite like buff and like confident, you know. So I actually really liked the bold decision and the change to go for the shy, introverted, dorky, studious character, because I think maybe a lot of people probably relate to that. Like, a lot of people like maybe going to school, like a university, where you get to play as someone who's like, you know, like sticks their headphones in to avoid crowds and stuff. And I did actually find that quite refreshing. I think it's like fairly rare that you'll play as like that shy character. So I think, you know, maybe in the Life is Strange community, that probably struck a chord and resonated with quite a lot of people. So I actually really did enjoy the choice to make, yeah, like the main character, the more shy one per se. And I think that's why it blended really well of having Chloe as the side character, but then eventually letting Chloe branch off into this like prequel to let her kind of take charge on Before the Storm. So yeah, like I don't know what you make of that point, mate, if you think that's like a fair assessment.
I think, it's completely fair. And I think there is the argument as well whereby in these games, the lead protagonist, the person that you play as, potentially has to be a little bit more on the bland side, because obviously the choices that the player makes are going to shape their behaviour, right? So you can have this colourful cast of characters surround you, but the person you'll play as is more morphed by what you do. But I guess the issue for me is like another one. It's just the lack of backstory. So like I say, the sort of the Seattle thing, they're coming back to Arcadia Bay, but the fact we don't even like get to meet her parents. Like, comparing to like the two other girls, and I'm talking about Chloe and Rachel here, we get to meet their parents. We get to go inside their homes. We get to see what's going on in their lives. With Max, I just get this impression, and it does sort of come through with her introversion as well. She just has like this, just air of detachment about her. And you can even say that with like what she does in photography. She likes to almost like stand back and have like a different perspective of reality. She always like sort of refrains from putting herself out there, which she does with like the Everyday Heroes contest as well. So I think it's like sort of like mild frustration with Max that there's a character in there, but because of her introversion and stuff, that she doesn't quite express it. And therefore, that's why I suppose your eye wanders and you start to see all these other characters in this universe that I find a little bit more interesting and compelling to, you know, talk about and see and watch, you know?
I think that's one thing Life is Strange 1 does very well, where it throws this array of side characters at you so you can go around meeting them. And I do agree with your point, and I'm glad you said it, because I'm usually the one that says it to death in like every character tier list, that I do think main characters are deliberately made not bland, but like as a blank canvas, right? That way you can accommodate multiple playstyles if you want to kind of go through and be nice to everyone, or if you want to chuck a bucket of paint at Victoria Chase, right? So yeah, like I completely get that. So yeah, it was probably a deliberate call on Don't Nod's part. One thing I quite like about Max though is that like there is this kind of I find this beauty almost of like a superpower landing on an everyday person, or an everyday hero, if you will. That's a Life is Strange joke for some of you get. But yeah, so like, because I think that's the thing, you know, I think a lot of people sort of like ask that question, like, oh, if you had a superpower, what would it be? Or what would I do if I had a superpower? So I quite like that beauty of like a superpower landing on like an everyday person. So I really like the executive choice that we play as Max and we have the power, while our probably more interesting, more depth-filled counterpart doesn't have it. So I don't know what you think of that, mate.
Yeah, I mean, as a concept, I really like it. Do I think that it's somewhat died a death now and it's gone on a little bit too long? Yes. I think I saw a video recently. It was talking about how Life is Strange 1 as a one-off is actually fantastic in that sense, and I don't think that they necessarily had it in mind to become a franchise. And, you know, actually, subsequently, or at least in my opinion, as the games have gone on, they've really struggled to replicate what Life is Strange 1 did, not even just in terms of the power, but in terms of characters as well, because Life is Strange 1 hit the beat so well in that sense. But I will just default to that point where if I am looking at Life is Strange 1 and I'm looking at double exposure, as I said already, I don't think that the character has evolved that much. But one game is clearly very good, the other one isn't. So while it is a little bit too simplistic to say that, you know, that of course it doesn't all fall on Max, and, you know, there's going to be good bits about her and stuff. But I think that Life is Strange 1, it's not down to how good Max is. I think that Life is Strange 1 as a narrative and as experience is very strong, and her character is nowhere near good enough to save double exposure, because that narrative is all over the place, and frankly, probably the worst one in the series. We've still got to do a ranking on that.
No, and that is a very good point, and I do think double exposure, in my eyes, it's a game that shouldn't have been made in the first place. And it is a really interesting point, right, where the one thing that double exposure has from the old games is Max Caulfield, right? And yeah, don't get me wrong, the writing's shambolic, the pacing's awful, like, it changed directions one too many times, that it was a pretty unsalvageable project in my eyes. But could the game have been more salvaged if, like, Max was different? Or, you know, like, you know, and that's a whole school of thought, isn't it? But no, it is a very interesting point that you make, mate.
To be honest, I don't think a double exposure should have been made, but I don't think Max should have been the lead, to be honest. From the barboshing the whole Chloe angle, I'm actually in a way glad that Chloe wasn't in the game, because if Chloe was in the game and it had the level of writing that game did, then I don't think it would have done her character any justice. I think double exposure, if anything, did worse for Max's character than anything else, as I've sort of pointed out, you know, from various things in this as well. But there is one other thing I wanted to say, mate, and this is, I suppose, the overrated in the sense of her personality, is that she obviously didn't stay in touch with Chloe. Now, not that she has to all the time be in touch with Chloe, but given the fact of what happened in Farewell, they left obviously on the day of William's funeral, which she couldn't help. But given the emotional investment and the amount of time that we spent in that Farewell DLC mulling over how to tell Chloe, you can tell that these girls are close. So why is it that when as soon as she went to Seattle, that she just left Chloe on red, you know, when she knows that she's going through all these things? So again, obviously I've mentioned previously that she's not really developed in terms of her character arc, you know, using her power irresponsibly, saving people, the consequences, X, Y, and Z. But also I think there's an argument to say that she's a slightly bad friend. Is that a bit of a stretch, mate?
Potentially. I mean, it is definitely like a video I almost like want to dive into, like on a separate occasion, because there is this whole school of thought, isn't there, where people often cite Chloe as the intolerable friend. But in my opinion, you play Before the Storm and it almost flips that narrative, doesn't it? And it is a really fascinating question because, you know, like, there's that conversation where Chloe's like, oh yeah, we're going to stay friends forever. And then, like, clearly in Before the Storm, you see that, like, Max starts ditching the text. And yeah, there is this school of thought there. Is Max a bad person? And I know, like, she's a kid and, you know, like, we don't know what she's going through in Seattle and stuff. But it is certainly, like, an interesting topic to talk about. And it is one that I do think does split the room. So yeah, I think there's a lot of merit to that. But guys, very well. That was Jack sticking his neck out on the line, saying maybe Max is an overrated character. Let us know in the comments what you think of that. Please note again, I know how passionate our Life is Strange community is, but it is a subjective opinion, so do respect it. You know, it's what we tried to do on the channel. But so guys, like I say, let us know what you think of that. Tell us your opinions on Max. And please go through our channel, hit like, hit subscribe, hit that bell. We do plenty of Life is Strange videos. There's lots in the library for you to dig into, and there'll be lots coming out in the future. But until then, we will see you in the next one.
See you later.